Here at GenCon 2022 with Nich Angell, the author, designer, illustrator of Colostle. And Nich, last night at the Ennies, you were very successful. How many nominations did you get, first of all?
Incredibly, I was up for 6 nominations. Can't quite believe it, so yeah.
And how many of those did you walk away with?
And I walked away with 1. I walked away with gold in Best Rules, which is amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you were a first-time game designer, so lightning does strike.
Well, yes, I should say I'm a first-time RPG designer. I have designed and worked on games before, tabletop games before. I've worked on like card games and board games, primarily as an illustrator, which is what my background is. But I recently designed a family card game called Sandwich Masters, which is a very silly, sort of fun strategy card game. But this is the very first time ever I strayed into creating a source book, rule book for RPGs. And yeah, incredibly managed to snag an Ennie, which is wicked.
And what kind of inspired you to make that jump from working on games and illustrations to actually designing your own? Was it something that, have you always played games? And
I've always played games, yeah. Been a massive gamer, both video games and board games, for as long as I can remember. And the biggest thing I used to do was draw comics. That was my thing. So as an illustrator, I was obsessed with world building and creating worlds. And I thought kind of in the early days that maybe the best way of achieving that was through comics and stories and stuff. And I still love that, don't get me wrong. But I realized that the world of RPGs is literally world building. It's like creating a world and then creating the rules in which other people can almost create worlds within yours. And I realized that was almost like the purest form of world building, and that was always the main angle I went for with my stories anyway. So it just seemed like a natural progression. And then during lockdown and pandemic and everything, I discovered solo RPGs and played some of those and realized just how mindful and experiential they were. And I was like, well, I've got all these worlds knocking around in my head, particularly this one which had been waiting in the wings, and I was thinking, well, that could be a comic. And now I was like, well, I kind of want to give this a shot and have a go at making my own, learning from the ones that I've played, but trying to come up with some new stuff. And there we are. That was Colossal. That was how it was born.
And for those that aren't familiar with Colossal, just give us a big overview of the world.
Sure. So, as I said, it's a solo RPG game, but it's set in a castle that is so colossal that there is no exterior to the castle. The rooms are so big that there are mountains, oceans, cities, valleys, canyons, everything within the rooms. And as you strike out as an adventurer across these incredible lands, you'll eventually reach walls, and these walls are the walls of the rooms that you're in. And maybe there'll be a window, and maybe there'll be a door, maybe there'll be a crack in the wall or whatever. And if you pass through that, you'll find yourself in another room. But there's no exterior, it's just castle infinitely in every direction. But these new rooms may have different lands and different peoples and all sorts of things in them. And the idea is that you're exploring to try and find out, what you can discover, and it's a sort of classic swords and sorcery fantasy to some extent, but obviously set within this bizarre place. But also wandering these rooms are these creatures called the Rooks, and these are like walking stone towers. They look like a castle tower, but they've got arms and legs, sometimes a strange number of them. And they're mindless, they just attack mindlessly, but they're the only source of magic in the world. So as an adventurer, if you want to power yourself up, you want to take rook parts from them, or you want to take their magic from them in order to become stronger. That's kind of how the leveling up works in a way. Then take a rook down, it's not easy, but if you can, power yourself up with what you get for them, and then carry on with your adventure.
And the game rules themselves are pretty simple. It's just a deck of cards that you use?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it works with a standard deck of playing cards. You don't have to use a special deck. I do have an illustrated deck that I created, but you can just use any standard deck and have your journal as well. A notebook of any kind will do, and you can keep your journal of your adventure. And yeah, you draw cards each turn, depending on the various stats that you have for exploration and combat, depending on which number of cards you draw, and then those give you prompts which you can check against the encounter tables in the book, which vary from place to place that you're in. And then it's really as simple as, I encountered these 3 things, how could I weave them together into my day of adventuring as my character? And it's up to you. You could pull ancient ruins and a cave, and you could decide that means that there is, in a cave, you find a ruin. Or you could go the other way around. You could say, in the ruins, you find a cave. You can explore and connect those prompts in any way you like. So the idea is, what would be good for your story? What kind of world and story and adventure do you want to have? But I give you these little guidelines along the way.
Cool. And so where can people find it?
So you can, the easiest place to find it is colossal.com, or just Google Colossal, but that's spelt like castle. So it's Colostle.
And we'll have all the links and the details to the
Brill.
video.
So Colostle.com, you can buy everything I've created there, and there's a new book coming as well, just recently come off the back of the Kickstarter, which is like an expansion, which adds more like places to discover, and it also adds a single player story campaign as well to work through, which kind of has some choose your own adventure elements to it, but not quite exactly like that. But it's kind of like, it's like I'm the DM now, but you're still doing a solo adventure and you can still take it where you want to go. But yes, you can get it all on there, on Colostle.com, and then it will be starting to hopefully start getting into stores and stuff, hopefully in the US as well. That's the big aim. I need to find some distribution and stuff for it, so it's early days. But Colostle.com is your best shot at the moment.
Cool, and then what's next?
Oh, what's next? Well, I've got a lot of future plans for Colossal. I don't want it to sort of stop there, and I don't think, as much as the 2 books that are now out are sort of like the basic rule setting, I've had so much feedback from people saying they've really enjoyed the solo campaign. So I'd like to do a bit more of that sort of stuff where I kind of take people on only slightly guided adventures. But I have a Patreon, and every month I'm releasing new content on there, which gradually gets collected into new books. And the Patreon at the moment is in a part of the Colossal that looks completely different to what the rest of it looks like. It's kind of Eastern themed. The castles all look like Japanese castles instead of European ones. So I like the idea of us discovering these different sort of cultures and different areas of the Colossal. And so maybe I'll do some more of those. And I like the idea of it becoming something of a book series where people can choose which volumes interest them and take their character to those places, kind of like they're picking destinations on a map to visit. So there's a lot more to come for Colossal for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. Congratulations on the Ennie.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of the conference, and we look forward to seeing your future plans.
Wicked. Cheers, you too. Thank you.